Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about Mary Fillis in this story time. Mary Fillis was born in North Africa a long time ago in 1577. That's 443 years ago. Wow! We're going to travel back in time to follow Mary's incredible journey. Mary was born in Morocco and most likely dark-skinned. It is possible she lived in Spain before arriving in England. She became one of the many Africans who were baptised as a Christian in Tudor England. Mary was the daughter of Fillis, a Moroccan basket weaver and shovel maker. She came to London around 1583 to 84 when she was just 6 or 7. She would have travelled on a ship in dangerous conditions as a young girl and would have had to be very courageous. I'm feeling a bit sick just thinking about it. It was a journey that would have taken at least 2 weeks by ship. What's really interesting is that she was growing up in London during a time in which there would have been a number of Moroccan representatives arriving in England from Morocco. These important people, these ambassadors in the royal court, looked like her. They shared her complexion, her skin colour. And yet, this would not have stopped them from being important and respected. English trade with Morocco began in 1551 when some merchant sailors set off on a journey to Morocco from England. Well, must have been exciting to go on such a journey, hey? When they were in Morocco, the English merchants would have sold things like linen, wool, coral, and amber. Too nice to throw. They would have bought from the Moroccan merchants things like dates. Oh, yes, dates. And almonds and sugar. This tells us that Mary's place of birth was a wealthy country. In fact, by 1576, the business between the countries was worth £17,775, which would be £3.3 million today. Wow, that's a lot of money. Growing up in London, Mary would have learned how important religion was in people's lives. We do not know if her family ever came to London, and so she may have grown up without her mother and father. We do know that she became a servant to John Barker, a merchant who was also sometimes a selling agent for the Earl of Leicester. The Earl of Leicester was a man very close to Queen Elizabeth and did trade as an English merchant with Morocco at the time. So Mary was never far from a connection to her homeland in these times. Mary was almost certainly Muslim before her baptism as a Christian. At the time, religion was a big part of everyone's lives. It was a daily part of life and it had an effect on everything you did. Can you imagine what that would be like? And what Mary must have experienced? This particular religion was Christianity. Because Mary would probably have been a Muslim while she was in Morocco, Christianity must have seemed strange to her. By the time of her baptism in the summer of 1597, she was working for a seamstress named Millicent Porter from East Smithfield in Tower Hamlets. Millicent Porter wanted to give Mary a Christian education. At this point, in a different and new household, Mary was learning to find her place in the world. Religion was what dominated it, and not being baptised was a real barrier to freedom in her choices. She would have only been a teenager, maybe like some of your brothers and sisters. We know that she was the one who asked her mistress to arrange an appointment with the officials in the church to organise her baptism. There is a list of witnesses who would have most likely been Mary's friends and supporters in the church congregation. We know this because there is an account, a record of her baptism in the church at St. Botolph's. This detailed record was given by Thomas Harrodance, the parish clerk. What was a normal day for him became a special moment in history. I wonder what he was like. Let's see.
She said her father's name was Fillis of Morisco, a black Moor, being both a basket maker and also a shovel maker. This Mary Fillis, being about the age of 20 years, and having been in England for the space of 13 or 14 years, and as yet not christened, and now being a servant with one Millicent Porter, a seamstress, dwelling in the liberty of East Smithfield, and now taking some hold of faith in Jesus Christ, was desirous to become a Christian. Wherefore she made suit by her said mistress to have some conference with the curate of this parish of St. Botolph's.
Sadly, we still know very little about Mary's life. She didn't leave an autobiography. We have no photos of her. What we do know, though, is that in the 1500s, she was a young black woman living in liberty as a free woman, a servant, not a slave. As a young adult, she chose to be baptised and took that decision in her life in her own hands with the help of her friends and mistress. Mary's mistress, Millicent Porter, died on the 28th of June, 1599. So sadly, we don't know what happened to Mary after this. Mary's story is so exciting and important. But we have to wonder if her baptism allowed her to be an accepted member of her church and society as a young black woman. What do you think? Well, thank you for listening to Mary Fillis's story. See you soon.